Alright, so returning to the squeaky accessory drive, and in the last video we noticed there's a missing bolt here in this bracket for the air conditioning that would have been removed when they did the water pump, and then they never put it back in. So I got a hold of the local Ford dealer, and it so happens they did have one of these bolts. I guess they come in bags of 4, and they had one left, and it's right here. Interestingly though, let me get rid of this light someplace. What I noticed with it is it looks like it's like hot dip galvanized or something, and there's like the threads are full of the galvanizing or plating material. So it's a good thing I noticed that. So before I try putting that in there, I'm going to have to chase the threads with a die and clean them up. So I think these are M10s. I'd have to go, I probably should go verify this. So I've got a die, and we're going to put this thing in the bench vise and try to clean these threads up. Alright, I got the bolt here in the bench vise, and then I've got like an M10-1.5 rather cheap die. I have some better ones than this, but we'll just check this out initially here to see if we can get this started on here. Alright, I think it's the right size. Not digging into the actual threads, so that's good. Yeah, it turns too easy to be digging into the actual threads, so I think it's just we're just gonna clean off this galvanizing or whatever the heck it was. When I first saw this, I thought maybe they put some anti-seize lubricant on there, because I'm going to put anti-seize lubricant on there because I believe this screws into the aluminum head, and they don't want it to corrode in place. But it was too hard to be anti-seize lubricant. So yeah, it looks kind of like some kind of hot dip galvanizing, which is rather odd. I'm surprised that that would be on here. So that turned fairly easily. And we'll see how these threads look now. Does it come off there yet? It's getting close. I just prefer not to have things drop on the floor if I can help it. Alright, there we go. Alright, set that aside. Yeah. I think that's just some grime or something there. Alright. Alright, I'm going to, I think I need to maybe loosen up the other bracket bolt in case it's a misalignment, so that these doesn't bind when I try to put it in there. That would not do to get this thing started in an aluminum head cross-threaded, because you're screwed if you do that. I really don't feel like taking anything more apart than necessary here. Alright, I tried to run this into the hole, and it did start screwing into the cylinder head, but it didn't want to turn very well. So I stopped and backed it out, because you shouldn't need to torque this in. It's going to strip out the threads, and maybe that's why the shop did not put the bolt back in, is because they messed up the threads in there. I don't know. Anyway, I got another die that's much tighter than the one I used earlier. This is a better die, and I've run it, up the threads here. It's definitely cut in more than the other one did, and I'm going to spurt a little lubricant on this, and we'll try threading this one in and see what happens if we can get it in. Alright, I put little spritz of oil on this, light oil. And then I loosened up all the brackets. We're going to see if this threads in any better after running the better die on there. Grab a socket wrench I have here. does this feel? Does it feel like it's going in without too much effort or not? It's starting to get a lot more torque required here. And I don't like that. I mean, it almost feels like it's tight right now. So there's something going on in there. I guess one thing a person could do is put a stack of washers on it, but that's kind of a cop-out. It should screw all the way in without, feeling like it's bottoming out. This is supposed to be the correct bolt for this. And I'm thinking that threads are damaged down in the cylinder head. You know, maybe it ripped the threads off down in the hole. I don't know, what's that look like? Need some better light here. I'm gonna go wipe this off and see if it's munching up the threads on the end of the bolt. Alright, off camera I found another bolt that's the same thread pitch. Very long bolt. It's a little bit shorter. It's from a 1980s vintage 3.8 Ford. Would have been used for the same application, hold air conditioner power steering bracket on. And it was in my junk bolts, engine bolts bin. So I did chase the threads on it just to clean some grease off of it with the dye. I sprayed a little bit of the light oil on there. In the meantime, I also blew out the hole with the air compressor because it seemed a little like there was grit when you pulled the bolt back out. So I tried screwing that one in, and I got it to go in some, but not so far that the head would bottom out on that bracket and tighten it down. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I really love to, I mean, the ideal thing to do is take the entire bracket assembly completely apart to get at the bare end of the head and then run a tap in there. I'm going to try the cheap way out or the easy way out or the short way out. I'm going to take and file or grind a couple notches in the threads of this shorter bolt to make it look like a tap a little bit, and that way when I run that in there, if there's stuff that it's going to accumulate, it won't pack into the threads. It's got a place to go like it does with a tap. And we'll see if we can't make the situation better, and we'll go from there. Alright, I used a angle grinder with a disc in it, and I cut kind of a slot or a notch through the threads here on this old bolt, and we're gonna run this one in the hole and see what happens. Let's get the socket wrench here. I'm just kind of using this as like a cheap man's, poor man's long tap to see if we can't help out whatever's. It seems to me there must be damaged threads in the cylinder head. Why else? See, that's already tightened up, and it won't go in any further without excessive amounts of torque. And we're a ways from the head of this bolt bottoming out here on the bracket. So I mean, I'd be willing to put this in instead of the real bolt if I have to, because under the theory maybe something's better than nothing, but I'm not going to force it in because it's just going to mess those threads up, and you'll never get this apart without tearing the head up. In which case, you know, whoever might have to be in here at some other time, same problem, only worse. And helicoil would be required to fix the cylinder head. So I don't know, we'll see if there's any stuff that accumulated in that notch. Maybe I have to go in and out a number of times to see what can happen here. Have I accumulated? Kind of looks like there's some gunk in there, doesn't it? Alright, so I think what I'll do is gonna clean this out, oil it, go back and, you know, do this several times and see if I can make some progress on cleaning it out. I might not come back on this until I've made some progress one way or the other. Alright, I using this old bolt that's shorter with a notch in it. I worked it in and out a number of times and I was getting gunk in the thread there. Cleaned it out, blew it out with the air compressor several times. Eventually I got it so I could thread it all the way in and then tighten it up on the head here. So then I tried the real bolt and ran into the same problem. I could not get it all the way seated, so I decided I cut a notch in this one as well because it's going into the head deeper, and we'll do the same thing. I'll run it in and out a few times with some lube on it and clean it out as best I can, and hopefully we'll be able to get that one to go all the way in as far as it needs to go and tighten it up. So that's what I'm going to work on right now. Alright, that actually went pretty well. This was the first time screwing it down in the hole, and I did have to use the wrench on it, but it wasn't presenting me with a scary amount of torque. So I was able to get the bolt all the way seated so the head is tight on the bracket. So I'm going to unscrew this and I'll clean off whatever might be there, and then I'm going to put some anti-seize lubricant on the thread and put it all back together and tighten everything I loosened up here, and hopefully it'll be good. Alright, I removed the bolt and we do have gunk on the notch I cut in there. So yeah, there's definitely crud there. We'll clean this up. I'm going to blow the hole out one more time. Probably run the bolt through one more time just to make sure threads are all clean and this won't be any problem. Someone else will take apart at some point. Then I'll put the thread anti-seize lube on the threads and I'll put it together. Alright, so I got to put the bolt back in for good this time. So I put a small dab of anti-seize lube on here. And as a cautionary tale, anyone who's ever used this stuff knows if you accidentally get one molecule of it somewhere it shouldn't be, the next thing you know, you're going to look like the Tin Man on The Wizard of Oz, because it seems like it just sort of gets everywhere. It's incredible. It's like if you wanted to mark something, just put a dab of that on there and you'll find out who's been touching whatever it was that you put it on, because they're going to be completely covered with it in no time flat. You can see this is going in very nicely now, and we're just going to give it a slight snug for the moment, and then I'm going to work on tightening all these other bolts up. It's always a good idea to make sure all your bolts are inserted and snugged up before you apply the final torque, because you may have something that's misaligned and you don't want the bolts binding in the hole. So that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to move on to something else with this project, which was originally about the squeaky problem with the belt drive that was talked about in a couple other videos. Alright.